You're listening to the OK Dad podcast.
Please leave your message for
Daddy.
Okay, Dad podcast. Let's start this thing.
Can you not put that on YouTube?
You're listening
Uno,
to my husband talk a lot.
Alright, well, this is going to be the episode that no one asked for.
I asked for it.
I am going to talk about Bigfoot, the Yeti, the monster, the myth. And there's a lot of stories about Bigfoot, I'd say, out there. What do you think, Babs?
Yeah, I think so. Mostly from you.
There's a ton. So I want to say I've had firsthand experience, but to go into this story, I need to go back a little bit. So the year is anywhere between 2011 and 2013. I was stationed in Fort Lewis McChord out in Washington State, so in the northwest region of the United States. It's a heavily wooded area up there. It's a lot of green. I'd say if you move up there, just bring an umbrella, but an umbrella is not needed. If you're up there, an umbrella is definitely not needed. You could walk around outside to your car and go back inside, and you don't need an umbrella. But if you walk around all day outside, you're going to be soaking wet because it rains 10 months out of the year. And we used to joke while we were stationed up there that people would love Washington State because they would go for the summers, and then they would move there. And then after they moved there, they would realize that it just rains all the time and it's terrible. So while I was stationed up there, I really didn't get to take in the scenery as much as I would like. I was usually hanging out with Jake, Benson, or even Dustin up there. So we were a pretty tight group together. And I was just thinking about the three of us and Rachel and Katrina while we were all up there, because I was listening to an unaired episode that I had about families and the holidays. So I might air that one later. However, we would often take trips around the area. We'd go into town, but we never quite did as much camping and stuff as I really enjoy. And the reason for that is probably because of the unit that we were based in. So Dustin, Jake, Benson, we were all radio operators, and we were stationed in Washington. We were attached to a long-range surveillance unit, so a LURS unit. And while we were up there, the cool thing was that they wanted the radio operators, the medics, and I think even some people from like the motor pool attached to the actual detachments. We had 3 detachments. Then is a very self-sustaining company, so we didn't need to outsource anything. So the cool thing that happened is all the infantry guys quickly realized that the medics, the radio operators, and even the motor pool people cannot keep up with them. Like, they can't do the runs, they can't do the rucks, they can't do any of the PT, nowhere near as much as these infantry guys are doing. And they're really, all of this is cool. But another cool thing about these guys is the leadership in the infantry units. They were all very senior experienced in infantry. So a lot of them were either Ranger tabbed or they came straight from regiment. And we had a first sergeant come from second bat down the road, and he came in and he actually became our first sergeant, and he was a really good leader that we had there. When this transition started, the detachments realized that nobody can really stay up with them. So what they started doing is taking everybody away from the company. So if the medic couldn't go on the rucks with them, they couldn't keep up with PT, they started moving them to headquarters. Same thing happened with our motor pool people. They all went to headquarters. Same thing happened with the radio operators. They all went to headquarters. Now, the long range surveillance unit that we have, it is especially focused on radio operations. So the detachments quickly found out without an expert in radio operations, they can't function.
Can't do radio operations.
They can't do any of it. So what they wanted is they wanted us to stay attached to the company and keep up as best as we can with the PT and whatnot, and the rucks, the jumps. But they wanted us to train somebody in the detachment and the teams to be their radio operator. Now, a lot of you guys that are radio operators out there or prior service military know that, hey, it's pretty easy to set up a radio and talk on it. Well, in the long range surveillance units that we have, we're not using HF, we're using what we call SATCOM. So what we do is we set up radios, and instead of an antenna shooting from point A to point B right in front of you, we got to shoot to a satellite in the sky, and then that satellite receives it and then sends it back down to the other radio. So you can talk to somebody that's on the other side of the earth, basically, with a radio shooting up a signal to a satellite. And you can't use just a regular point and click antenna. And so we would spend hours training these infantry guys that are going to be the designated radio operators. And they would not. They would be using wrong antennas. Cables wouldn't be connected. Batteries would run out. They would try to be connecting the whole time, and a hand mic wouldn't be plugged in. They would have the wrong frequencies. They would upload or install the wrong ComSec in it. So it was like garbage. Anytime they would go out without a radio operator, nobody would talk. Maybe there would be one team. There's 3 detachments, 3 teams in each detachment. Maybe one team would be successful on it. But because of that, they had to attach a radio operator to each of these teams. And that's where the struggle comes in. So I really pride myself on that service because I was never the reason why our team would slow down. I know I wanted to make an effort for that too. So by the time I got out of active duty, I was running anywhere from 20 to 25 miles a week. I was rucking anywhere from 6 to 8 miles, depending on the track that we had, with 65-pound rucks. And infantry guys were doing way more than this too. I don't know what their runs were, but I know their rucks were still 65 plus pounds, and they would do this every Friday. They would do a ruck. They would do rucks while wearing their gas masks. We did a 5-mile run while wearing our gas masks at like a 6 to 7 minute pace. So these guys were on top of it while leaving all the other radio operators in the dust. There was a few of us that could keep up with them, not the fastest, but like we wouldn't fall behind. And on top of that, you just have to be ready, because a training mission involves going to a bird. So we would jump Chinooks. So going to a bird, before we even get on the Chinook, we would get a mission. We would plan for 24 hours. We'd be in isolation. After we plan, we would then go and brief the commander on it. And once he okays it, then we'd go to the bird. We would then jump in, and we would ruck to whatever point that we designated. And it's usually like anywhere from 5 to 10 mile ruck through the woods, depending on what it looks like, or whatever the mission was, or whatever you briefed on. Sometimes you'd have to cut loose and go that way, or cut a different way, and then you have to send it up. Then after that, you're pulling surveillance for 3 days. So 3 days, 2 nights, whatever you have in your ruck is what you eat. You pack in, you pack out. I always tell my wife that, like, we pack in, pack out. So whatever we picked up or whatever we have there, like trash, garbage, we took with us. And after that, after our mission's complete, we're setting up whatever surveillance we had for the time that we're there. And after we send that up, we have to now ruck back to a different point because you never want to go back to where you came in, and fly back on a bird, picks you up, you go back, you do a debrief, and then that's it, you're done. And so training just for that training took a lot out of everybody. So you're doing constant rucks every week with heavy weight. You're doing runs every week at a 6 to 8 minute pace, depending on what squadron or what you're trying to do. There was a guy that was running a 5-minute mile when we were in, and this guy could run for days. The fastest I've ever gotten was down to a 6-minute mile. I could run a 5 mile in 35 minutes, 33 if it was a good day. But it's very wooded out there, heavily forest. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous, like my wife. But
do you ever run into a tree?
Did I run into a tree?
Did like anyone ever like just run into a tree?
During the rucks and stuff, especially at night, because we would do it with night vision. We'd wear nods, and you have to, it's your night vision, and the nods. You know, the Army used to have nods that was for both eyes, and then we transitioned into one because it's better like that. So we would train with just one night vision gun, and what would happen the most common is somebody would not see a branch and trip over the branch and like just fall and eat it, and it ruins your depth perception because you have one eye that's seeing a little bit further than the other. So it's kind of like if you had the mirror on your cars, how the one on the right is a different view.
Yeah.
If you had them both in front of your eyes, you're seeing different depths. And because of that, we did some training that was down in Louisiana, and at night we had our nods on, and he tripped, and he couldn't continue for the rest of the month that we were there.
Oh no!
Because when you're falling, but you have a 65 to 85 pound ruck on your back. So he fell with that while holding his M4. And then, like, in the middle of the night with your whole pack. And we had just started out. So we had to call someone to come pick him up. And then we had to keep going. So that sucks when that happens because
you're okay, though?
Eventually he was. I don't think he broke a leg, but I think he, definitely sprained something or tore something.
God.
But he didn't break any bones.
That's so crazy.
I don't know if he listens or not, but it's my buddy Franklin.
Sorry, Franklin. Sorry, I brought that up.
If I'm remembering correctly, it was him out in Louisiana, and that was a nice one too, Louisiana. But my story kind of resides in Washington. So because of all the training that's going around, we're training in like really rough environment up there. And like I said, everybody's Ranger tab. They've been to regiment. A lot of these guys have been deployed, and this is 2-3 years into my career. And none of the radio operator, one, Sergeant Bailey is one of my NCOs. He was my team lead at the time. Came from Ranger Bat.
Oh. And
he was Ranger tab, so he's gone through Ranger school. And he was a radio operator. So it was somebody that we kind of looked up to, like, okay, cool, this guy's like hot stuff. He does everything. And even going to airborne school, he was the one that was like, hey, just beat everybody on the run here.
Just beat him.
Yeah. He was like, just beat him and you'll get in. He's like, we'll get you in. Just beat him. Very straightforward, just from like Georgia. Just, hey, man, just beat him. Beat him and you'll be good. You're going to airborne school. And I'm like, all right.
Does he listen?
Who? Sergeant Bailey?
Yeah.
I mean, no, he's the one that was telling me that.
No, does he listen to the podcast?
Oh, no. I doubt it.
Is he going to care?
No,
that is
I think he's okay.
Spot on me.
And my super accurate.
You're great with impressions.
Super accurate impression. No, so he was there, so I really looked up to him and like his knowledge. And when we had a lieutenant come in, so fresh out of school, he was there for a couple of months, and he ended up going to Ranger School, but he couldn't go to Airborne School. For some reason, you have to go to Airborne School before you go to Ranger School.
Okay.
So for some reason, he couldn't. So he went to Ranger School, and that's grueling. That's 3 phases. That's like Google Ranger School Army, and you'll see like how tough that is. But he went to Ranger School. He didn't get to do the jump in Ranger School, but he went to Ranger School, completed, and when he came back, it was probably maybe 2 months when he came back, and he wanted to do a lot of the training that he had just picked up. So these guys that are in our platoon are, mind you, a lot of people are in the military as a regular job. A lot of the radio operators join the military not thinking that they're going to be attached to an infantry team. So a lot of these guys are still like barely skirting height and weight standards, body fat. A lot of them are still coming in the mornings before runs, drinking Monster energy drinks, just like chugging them down, eating candy throughout the day, not focused on any kind of physical training, diets at all whatsoever. And a lot of the time when you're in your early 20s, you're in your late teens, 18, 19, when you're in the military. So these guys are all there like that. And this LT wants to train everybody on a majority of the stuff that he learned in Ranger School. So me and Jake are out there. I think we're out there for about 4 or 5 days total, because we went out for the whole week. So we started Monday. And of course we're out in a drop zone. We call them DZs. So we're out there in a drop zone. The first thing that happens is, hey, we got to find points on a map. Go find your points on a map. So, okay, fine. And of course, I can't be with my buddy Benson. I can't be with Head, who's Jake Head. I can't be with him. I can't be with Dustin Allman. And we're finding the point. So I get stuck with this guy that, he's all right. But I get stuck with him. I know how to read a map. I know how to find points. So I'm not really worried about it. So I just give it to him, like, here, you find him, like, we'll be fine. Like, I know how to read a map. I know where we're at. And so I'm just following him, and he gets lost.
Oh.
So.
Well, why'd you give it away if you know how to do it?
Well, because I was not having fun. So I'm just always looking to have a good time, and like he couldn't even take my sense of humor or anything. So I'm just like, here, like, I'm not worried if we find these points or not. Like, I know I can find them. Like, why don't you give it some time? And I came, we got the first point wrong, so I corrected him. Second point we got, and then I was like, you got to find the other 2. So he ended up like taking us to the wrong spot. So I get the map back, and then I get like super upset. So I start drawing it out on the map, seeing where it's at. So I start walking back, and at this point, we actually, you can hear each other because we're all using the same frequencies that were designated. So at this point, like, I can hear where Jake's at. He knows where I'm at. So we meet up before we head back, and we start going over the points. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'm going to go check the last point, and then we'll meet you back. So Jake goes back, and the whole point of doing map reading is you only have a compass and your map. Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's how you can find the point in the woods. You can't do anything else. And so we get back, and they tell me, like, hey, like, you guys failed. And I'm like, how did we fail? And he's like, you guys are like 5 minutes late. Y'all are going to have to go find the points again. And at this time, it's already dark. Like, it's at dusk. It's turning like pitch black dark in the woods. There's not any kind of lights coming from the city. So at this point, Jake's already taking his stuff off, and they're like, yeah, well, you found everything just in time. And he's like, yeah, of course I did. And he's taking stuff out of his bag to eat and drink water, and he takes out a GPS. We call them daggers.
Oh.
So he takes out a GPS, and they're like, what the hell is that, Jake? And he's like, it's a dagger. He's like, did you use it? He's like, no, I didn't use it. And he's like, why do you have it? And he's like, well, if I ever got lost, I can open it up. You didn't give us, boundaries. So how would I know if we went out of a boundary? And Jake's like me. He's very just upfront, honest. There's no reason to have any kind of distrust. But of course, we're E4s at the time. We're just specialists. And he's like, no. Like, you're going to have to do it again, just like Vasquez is. And he's like, what? Why? And he's like, because you took a dagger. And he's like, no, I'm not. And he's like, yeah, you are. Both of your teams are going to go back out there and you're going to find 3 different points each. So we get ready to load up again. And he's like, you know what? Y'all go out first. And then in 10, 15 minutes, Vasquez's team is going to go out. So I say, okay. And me and Jake, we can basically look at each other and we know what the other one's thinking. So at this time, he sends Jake's team out. 15 minutes later, me and this other guy go out. And I meet Jake right over the berm. And we're calling in, we're radioing in. And I was like, dude, let's just mess with them right now. And he's like, okay. So they're monitoring the frequencies. Me and Jake, we're all on the same frequency. So I'm standing right next to Jake and I call him, do his call sign like, hey, this is like Studio 54, this is Disco 3. And then he's like, Disco 3, it's a Studio 54. Studio 54 is a Disco 3, switching to alternate frequency over. And so he's talking back to me. And then so he says the same thing, right? And then we out ourselves. So out means like the conversation's over.
Yeah.
So we out ourselves, and then our LT comes back on calling us like, hey, Studio 54, Disco 3, Studio 54, Disco 3, like, where are you at? Stop doing this. Like, you guys need to be on the appropriate. And like, we just didn't answer. And then so I was like, well, you ready to find 6 routes altogether? And he's like, yeah. And so we're going down, we're getting the routes. We get them all back. I think we're done by like 2 a.m. in the morning.
Oh.
So by the time we're probably up anywhere from 4 to 5 o'clock that morning, and we finish the routes, we go back, and they're just pissed. Like, most of the people were kind of asleep, but everybody else is just pissed at me and Jake because of what we did. And we're like, we don't have an alternate frequency. Like, we're not going to do that, blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, we didn't tell them that we just teamed up to get all 6 routes because it was BS. And even then I got yelled at because he's like, you were trying to be a smartass and just wait to the end, find off all the points. You just found the points and went to sleep out there. That's what they told me that I was doing. And I was like, no, like, we got lost. And he was like, no, you just found the points and went to sleep out there. So I was like, okay.
What?
Yeah. So at the end, we got all the things back. They're pissed. So now they have Jake and me pulling security for the rest of the morning. So no sleep. So me and Jake are there pulling security. And one of the ways that you pull security, if you're just doing it in twos, is you lay down, you have your rifle in front of you, and you have your leg or your buddy's leg over the other one.
Mm-hmm.
So your legs are in Y's, you're right next to each other, and your legs over. So as they came by to check on us, and one of us would be awake, we can just kick the other one, kick him in the leg, and say, hey, wake up, like he's walking around. Well, I think it was like 7 o'clock. They came by and kicked both of our legs because me and Jake were asleep. So that next morning comes on. We're doing drills all day. We get to stop and eat. But we're doing drills all day. We're doing radio drills. We're doing some ranger like LDA crossing drills. And it's LDA's linear danger area. So it's like a road if you're crossing a road. So we're just doing that. And the people that are ranger tabbed and in this unit are very like muscle memory driven. So we're doing that for hours. We're doing ready up drills, which means you have your rifle, it's pointed down, and when they say ready, you have it. When they say up, you put it up and you get your sight picture in. Mm-hmm. And we're just doing that all day. And we're doing map reading. We're doing how to make like a makeshift map on the ground when you're going to do like a brief to someone. All stuff that an E4 and E3s don't need to learn at the time. This is really like schoolhouse stuff. So we're learning all that. We're getting tired. Then that night we start going, because it's some kind of training, to where we're going a few miles. The good thing was we're going a few miles in and on a road. And as we're going down this road, we're using our nods. We're not tripping over anything yet. Nobody's like losing their stuff. But we're clocking it. We're like, dude, we got 2 hours so far of sleep since we've been out here. And it was hilarious because we only have blanks, but we're carrying our ARs or our M4s. And as we're walking through, like you just start hearing stuff in the middle of the night because it's pitch black. And then if there is a little bit of moon, you can see stuff. And so we're hearing stuff. and all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, our section leader, he just like screams like, "What the?" And he moves, and like we've been training all day, so we all ready up our M4s, but it's not gonna do anything because they're blanks. And it was like an armadillo, or it was a possum that was right there, and we're like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, let's keep going. So we keep going at night. I remember too, this is something like we specifically had to train on, was calling in something. So we would call in something, and whenever you get on a mic in the Army, you need to just talk loudly into it. It's not like a regular phone. And Jake, I don't know if it's because he was tired or what was up with him, but every time our section leader would get, our platoon sergeant, not section leader, our platoon sergeant was getting really upset with him. He's like, "Call it in." He's like, "I will." He's like, "Say it." And so he's like, "Okay, Roger, Studio 5-4, this is Disco 3. And he's like, "No, you need to say it into it, say it loudly like normal." And he's like, "Okay, Roger, Sergeant, Studio 5-4, this is Disco 3. And he was like, I don't know where his head was at, but it was hilarious because that went on like for some time. We finally got up, we got there, and then we got to like rest for a little bit, but like rest, well, nobody can sleep because the LT was still going around making sure everybody had lack of sleep. Nobody was getting like eating trash food. And all the people that are there that are unfit, that are unhealthy, that are drinking and eating all their food and stuff, like they're already out of all their like trash food they've been eating. Yeah, so they've been drinking all their monsters, eating all their like
oh my gosh,
gummy
they must have been
bears.
so burnt out.
Yeah, they were. I didn't know then about carbs and all that stuff, like from what I know now. But yeah, like that was probably taking a big toll on them. And we're in our 20s at the time, so it's not killing our whole day, but the people that had like bodies that probably shouldn't be in the military were definitely feeling it.
Oh, I'm sure they felt like they were dying.
They looked like it. I mean, the rucks on these were definitely not the 65-pound rucks. They were more like 50 at the time because we had like set up a cob, COB, and that's just kind of basically like a headquarters. But for the time that we're out there, and then now we're doing like room clearing. We set up, we wake up the next day, and I think at this point it's like Wednesday. So we set up the next day, and all we're doing is drills for like a casualty evacuation. So we're going into a town, we're clearing the rooms, we're pulling somebody out, and we're just doing that all day. We're pulling somebody on a skidco, so the one that's a plastic that you put a body on, and then wrap them up, and then you just pull it. So the whole team's doing it, and we're trying to do it in time, and like it's just kicking our butt. Like, and nobody's having a good time there except for the lieutenant who just came back from Ranger School, which is just like, this is what I did. This is what y'all are doing now. So we're absolutely like dying now. We break again, and then now at the end of that night, they want us to move again. So we're moving again to another spot, and we're rucking. We're going there. And the next morning, I think it's Thursday now, we finally stop somewhere, and now they set up to where they had casualties in areas. So at this point, now we've got all the training knocked out, so they want us to go pick up the casualties, radio it in. We can't use roads, but it's set up to the time to where we can't go to sleep at all during the day at this point, but they're letting us plan for it. So at this time, we set everything up, we know the mission, and then right around probably, I don't know, maybe an hour, 2 hours before dusk, they let us go. And so different teams go out, and the scenario was there's a downed airplane, there's a survivor, enemies are coming in because they saw the plane go down. So that was a training scenario. So we set out, we're going. And as we're walking through the woods, I think we're at 4 hours of sleep now the whole time, and we make it to our first casualty. And sure enough, it was somebody who was like burnt out. Like, he's got a profile, and if you have a profile in the military, he's got a dead man's profile. So a dead man's profile in the military means you can't do anything. You're just supposed to be there, existing. So you can't lift weights, you can't run, you're not supposed to do cardio. If somebody does corrective training for you, can't do push-ups, can't do sit-ups, can't do anything physical. Not supposed to do anything.
Now, how do you stay in the army then?
It should be a temporary one. So nobody has a permanent dead man's profile. If somebody has a permanent dead man's profile, then they're getting out of the military because they won't let you stay in. So we have a couple of those temporary dead man profiles, and those guys are the casualties. So they're just sitting out there in the woods by themselves. And this is, like I said, 11 to 13. So like phones aren't great. The service isn't great. You're out in the middle of nowhere.
Can't really be doing anything.
Nothing. Yeah. So they're just there. They're making noise like, but even then, like, it's eerie because they're a few miles away from us. So doing that in like pitch darkness in the woods, it's like scary because you hear something move or scatter. And this is where it gets interesting because we pick him up and we start going to the second point, to the second casualty that we need to pick up as well. And we're making sure that nobody sees us. So a lot of I wouldn't call them cadre because they're in our unit, but a lot of the people that are there, that are training with us, like we had other NCOs that were there, so other leadership, they were looking for us without knowing where we were going.
Yeah, because part of it's that they're supposed to catch you, right?
Right, yeah, because there's supposed to be the training scenarios, there's enemies nearby, and they're going for the casualty, not necessarily that they know we're inbound. So to make it fair is like, hey, like, go find the casualties, and like, obviously you're the enemy, so take your guns, blah blah blah. And they we don't even know who's going to be the enemy. Like, oh, we know so and so's there, we know, Jake's going to be the enemy. Like, we don't know who they picked out of our team to be the enemy. So we're in the woods and map reading, right? We get lost. So
again,
yeah. So, but now we're in like a small 4 or 5 man team at this time. So the person who's leading us is the one that's like, hey, I need to reassess and reevaluate. So we're all wearing our night vision. So now we need to stop in the middle of like our movement. So when you stop, this is what we trained on too. If you're stopping in the middle of your movement, what are you going to do? You need to pull security. And anytime we're doing night operations, you need to have a red light on because it's light discipline, which is also something that we trained on. So here we are in like 3 a.m. in the morning, like dead morning. Like there's dew is forming on the leaves and the grass around. And we pull security. There's probably 4 or 5 of us pulling security. There is another E4 who's helping the other guy pull the map out and read it correctly. And you can probably, I don't remember the exact number of us now, but I remember everybody's there, right? Everybody, we got 4 people pulling security. We got the 2 people looking at the map. And then we have like our NCO that's just walking with us without anything, like without a ruck, without any of that. He's just walking with us because he's there for the training part. And so you can hear all of them. We're whispering like, okay, do you know where this is at? Do you know what you're doing? I'm talking to Jake like,
was this back when you used to be able to hear?
Yeah, this was back. This was like maybe 1 or 2 jumps in. So it's the gunfire, but I think what damaged my ears the most was jumping out of airplanes.
Okay.
Because what would happen is we would get ready to jump out of airplanes. It would take us 40, 50 minutes just to get ready. And then it would take us another hour until the winds died down. But whenever sometimes we'd be on the mat just waiting for the Chinook to show up or the bird to show up. And then walking to the bird, we would do that. And on my second to last jump with the company and like all together, as we were waiting to go out, so one of the pilots or one of the crew members came and was like, what are y'all doing? Like, none of y'all have ear pro on. Put on ear pro. And ear pro is earplugs. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, nobody ever told us that. And he's like, yeah, anytime you're going to get on an airplane or a bird, you need to have ear pro on. And like, my mind was blown because I'm like, that's never happened. I didn't even notice the tinnitus and everything until later on. The ringing in my ears. And I think it's from jumping. And I think it's from the range, but I don't think if you're at the range, you're obviously wearing ear pro. So I don't think it's that, but I think it's going on and off the bird without any ear pro. And so you can hear everybody whispering like, hey, like what's going on? Like, oh, this freaking sucks. Like, when are we getting out of here? Like tomorrow's the last day. And we're all there and we're pulling security and we're making sure nobody, because if we see somebody, then it's part of the training. Like, oh, I see somebody, my 12 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. Well, I've been hunting before. I used to go hunting as a kid, and you would see sparks. If you shine a light, you would see like a shimmer, a glow, a glimmer at night, and it would be the only thing shining. And 9 times out of 10, it was a spider. Because if you shine a bright light at a spider, it'll reflect to you.
Yeah, it has the green reflections.
I don't know if it's because they got like 40 eyes or what.
No,
but
there's something that's like in an animal's retina. We learned about this.
Animals or spiders?
No, like just in general, like certain animals have it. Like foxes have it, cats have it. Like where you go over it with the light, it's like it's a protective mechanism. I forgot exactly why they do it.
For light? Bunnies have it. Well, I see this, right? So when you're wearing your nods or night vision, those reflections still happen because it's just a different light that's shining out of the night vision.
Mm-hmm.
So I see this in the distance and I'm like, whoa, this is weird. And then I start seeing the outline of a figure leaned up against a tree.
But humans don't have that.
An outline? Like a dark outline?
Humans don't have the shimmer.
Well, I saw the shimmer and I looked back and I was like, hey, do you see over there? And Jake's like, no, I don't see anything. And I look back and then the shimmer's not there. Then I see the outline.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, there's an outline. Somebody's over there. Like they're going to try to pop up on us and like tell us that we failed and blah, blah, blah. So like now my eye is just dead set on it. And then I see it move in between the trees. And it's super heavily wooded. So at this point, it's hard to tell if it moved or if it's hard to tell what it was between the movement between two trees because there's so many trees. Because one, we're trying to stay hidden so nobody can see us. And then two, like we're also in cover and cover is just something that's like concealment. We're in concealment, but we're not in cover. So there's bushes and stuff that's around. So I see this move and I'm like, okay. And so in my mind, the person that's able to do this is Sergeant Bailey. Sergeant Bailey is also Ranger tabbed. He's been to regiment. He's really good at this, super quiet. And so I'm looking like now I'm like dead focused on it. And then I see it like start to move again. And it's the size of a body from where I'm at. It's the size of a human body. So I'm like, hey, Sergeant Bailey is about to like jump on us. And then so I start going to my left, like Sergeant Bailey's about to jump on us, like right now. And then not even 5 seconds after that, like I make it out, like just right there looking at us. I see the glimmer. The figure is looking at us, and I'm like, Sergeant Bailey's about to jump up on us. And not even 5 seconds after that, I hear Sergeant Bailey talking right behind me. He's with the people reading the map. So I look back and verified that that's Sergeant Bailey. And I was like, Sergeant Bailey? He's like, what? And I was like, okay. So I look back forward, and then now I'm just ready to see like whoever else it is. And I look forward and it's gone. Nothing. And we're in Washington State. I don't know if we're like near North Yelm, the Yelm area, but we're in one of our DZs that are there. And we go to our next point, and I'm freaked out like, what the hell? Like, who was that? Because I'm thinking somebody, it's somebody. And we go to our next point, and the only other person that's going to be there was with the other casualties. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't know. Like, it's got to be proven to me to be real. And when I went there, the only other guy that could have been out there, I started asking him, because I'm not just going to be like, oh, yo, this is what I saw. So I'm like, hey, where were you at? And he's like, no, I've been with this team the whole time. So now I'm accounting for everybody. Everybody's been accounted for
You're
except
just
for.
taking a survey.
Well, I am, because I want to know. Because if I see something like, am I crazy? Did I not see one of y'all out there? One of y'all trying to mess with us? And that's where my mind was at. Like, one of y'all is just trying to mess with us. So at this point, I have two people that are unaccounted for. I have our lieutenant, who is ranger tabbed, and our platoon sergeant, who is pissed at us.
Mm-hmm.
And now we, like, both teams link up. We're going back, and sure enough, like 5-6 miles away, our lieutenant and platoon sergeant have been there. No indication at all that they've been out. They've been like relaxing the whole time in the tent, and that's everybody. Everybody's accounted for. Now, we are in Washington, and there's a place called Miller's Hill on post, and we would do rucks there. It would be part of that 5 to 8 mile route that we would do every week. And now we had a competition to where we would do this ruck, and you had to go through Miller Hill. Now, I wasn't in the very front, but I wasn't in the middle, so I was after the very front people. Go through Miller Hill, and when I finish, it kind of circles back. So like, you're coming up, you go through Miller Hill, and then you kind of loop back. Now, when I'm coming back, there's people that were behind me that are now in front of me. So now I'm pissed, and I'm like, why are y'all in front of me? And they tell me that there's a bear in Miller's Hill that, like, it was spotted like 5 minutes ago. And like, sure enough, like, the team's there to confirm that, like, it's a black bear. Like, they saw it. And so I'm like, okay. So there are black bears where we're stationed.
Yeah.
Now, we've all been in the zoo. We've all seen pictures of bears. This was not the figure that I saw in the dark was not, it did not have the fur, it did not have the robust like arms, didn't have the robust like legs. The abdomen was very robust. It goes into like the head of it, but it wasn't like a trim figure, like head, neck, abdomen, arms, and legs. It was like a head into an abdomen to some like arms, not as like fluffy as a bear. But like I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, or I'm not saying that I believe, but there are a couple of things to take into account from this whole story. One, I was very, very, very tired from all the physical activities that we've had the whole week. Two, I've had about 4 hours of sleep that entire week, maybe 6. I know it was less than 8 because me and Jake were adding it up. We had 3 would be like the very low like intake of food. So like our diets that whole time, very bad because we didn't have enough to sustain the amount of output and work that we were doing. And then the other thing too is that it's at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, or it's at the very early in the morning, and I'm wearing night vision to see.
Yes.
So these are all the things that I understand. But to me, I cannot say definitively that it was a bear. But all the stuff that's out there for Bigfoot or the Yeti, I cannot, and I've always said this, I cannot confirm nor deny that it was my boy Bigfoot.
So what was the weather like? Like, was this cold weather?
It was cool. It's probably it didn't feel like it was cool, but it was definitely like 40 to 60s. It wasn't like extremely cold or extremely hot.
Yeah, so then probably not a Yeti, because I think they have to be in like winter time.
Well,
So
I mean,
it's
it's
probably
usually
Bigfoot.
cool. It wasn't the summer. So the summers up there are hot, like 80 degrees in Washington State. Feels like maybe 95 in Washington. I mean, feels like 95 like in Texas.
Really?
Like, yeah, 80 to 85 degrees over there feels very hot than in Texas. So like the 40s, we're wearing tops and stuff because even there, like the coolness. I mean, every time I would come back, especially during the winters when I would come to San Antonio from Washington State, I would just need to wear shorts because it wasn't as cold as it was up there, even though it was the same degree. But I mean, these are all things that I definitely take into consideration. And I don't tell this story often. And I did. This is definitely the extended version of this story. So this is my wife is sitting right next to me. So this is probably the most she's ever heard of this story too. Let me talk about it. But that's definitely the background, and that's my Bigfoot story. So I'm not saying that he doesn't exist. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that he doesn't not exist. That's my takeaway from.
Okay.
That's my final thought. Well,
You
all
have to
right,
take
guys.
your word for it.
What?
You have to take your word for it.
I mean, there's factors when you're thinking about the story, so I totally get that. But I mean, it's out there. And then even after seeing like the bears and the black bears that are there, it wasn't a black bear. I'm confident in saying that. I don't know. Maybe it was aliens.
Aliens.
No. I don't think it was aliens. I don't think it was a black bear. But what I am certain of is that I do not know what it was. Until next time, this is the OK Dad Podcast.